Jeff German. On the morning of September 3rd, 2022, the body of 69-year-old Jeff German was found outside his Las Vegas home. He had been stabbed 7 times, 4 of the wounds to his neck. Surveillance footage from across the street had captured someone entering his yard the previous day, slipping through a gate on the side of his house, and lying in wait. When German opened his garage door and walked around the corner, the attacker was already there. The suspect had worn an orange jacket, a straw hat, and Nike sneakers, all captured on neighborhood security cameras. A maroon SUV was spotted visiting the area before and after the attack. Jeffrey Michael German was born August 23, 1953, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He earned a master's degree from Marquette University and spent over 4 decades covering Las Vegas as an investigative journalist. He worked for more than 2 decades at the Las Vegas Sun before joining the Las Vegas Review-Journal. He built a career breaking stories about organized crime, government corruption, and political scandals. He covered the MGM Grand Fire in 1980, the FBI's Operation G-Sting corruption probe, and the 2017 mass shooting. He authored the true crime book, Murder in Sin City, about the death of casino heir Ted Binion, a case that also appears later on this list. The shocking twist came when police identified the suspect. It was not a mob figure. It was not a career criminal. It was Robert Tellez, a sitting Clark County public administrator, an elected official who oversaw the disposition of deceased people's estates. German had published a series of investigative articles in May and June of 2022 exposing Tellez for creating a hostile work environment, bullying employees, and maintaining an inappropriate relationship with a female staffer. Tellez subsequently lost his re-election bid in the Democratic primary. Prosecutors alleged that public humiliation of German's reporting, which had destroyed his career, his reputation, and threatened his marriage, drove Tellez to plan the attack. The evidence against Tellez was overwhelming. Police found DNA matching Tellez beneath German's fingernails, meaning the journalist had fought back against his attacker in his final moments. At Tellez's home, officers found cut-up pieces of a straw hat and a gray athletic shoe, matching what the suspect wore in the surveillance footage. Digital records showed Tellez had searched German's address on online maps before the attack. The orange shirt and the weapon were never recovered, but the circumstantial and forensic evidence left no room for doubt. In August of 2024, a jury convicted Tellez of first-degree murder after nearly 12 hours of deliberation over 3 days. The jury found the act was willful, deliberate, and premeditated, constituted elder targeting because German was over 60 and was committed by lying in wait. Judge Michelle Levitt sentenced Tellez to life with the possibility of parole after 20 years, then added 8 additional years through enhancements for weapon use and the victim's age, bringing the minimum to 28 years. Standing in shackles, Tellez offered condolences to German's family, but continued to deny responsibility. His attorney stated he plans to appeal. Jeff German was the only journalist targeted in the United States in 2022, and one of at least 17 media workers targeted in the country since 1992, according to the Committee to Protect Journalists. He spent 4 decades holding powerful people accountable in a city built on money, influence, and secrecy. The man who ended his life was one of those powerful people, a public official who sat behind a desk administering the estates of deceased citizens by day and allegedly plotted the silencing of a reporter by night. German's colleagues at the Review-Journal did not stop working after his passing. They finished the investigation he left behind, including a major story about a Ponzi scheme he had been working on at the time. They completed his work because that is what he would have done. Did Tellez really believe he could attack a journalist in his own driveway, wearing identifiable clothing captured on camera, and not get caught? German was targeted by the politician he exposed, But the next case involves a doctor who flew to Las Vegas to visit a woman he had been financially supporting and ended up in the trunk of her car in the desert. Thomas Burchard. On March 7, 2019, Las Vegas Metropolitan Police responded to a report of a suspicious vehicle near the Lake Mead National Recreation Area. Officers detected a foul smell coming from inside a blue Mercedes-Benz C300 that had been abandoned in the desert. The car was registered to a woman named Kelsey Turner. Inside the trunk, they discovered the body of an older man. He had been beaten to death. A bloody baseball bat was found beside him. The victim was identified as Dr. Thomas Kirk Burchard, a 71-year-old psychiatrist from Salinas, California. Burchard had a longtime girlfriend of 17 years named Judy Earp back in Salinas. Despite this committed relationship, he had also developed a separate connection with Kelsey Turner, a young model who had appeared in Playboy Italia and Maxim magazines and maintained a large following on Instagram under the name Bad Barbie. According to Earp, Burchard had a generous nature that ultimately proved fatal. He initially helped Turner find an apartment after she told him she was struggling financially and feared becoming homeless. What started as occasional help escalated dramatically over time. Earp said Burchard spent upwards of $300,000 on Turner, paying rent on a home she shared with her mother in Salinas, California, and later on, a house Turner shared with her boyfriend, John Kennison, and roommate Diana Pena in Las Vegas. The 71-year-old doctor was unknowingly funding a household that included the boyfriend of the woman he believed he was helping. In early March of 2019, Burchard flew to Las Vegas to visit Turner. According to testimony from roommate Diana Pena, who later cooperated with prosecutors, Burchard and Turner got into a confrontation after Turner became upset about photos and messages on his phone. During the argument, Turner allegedly demanded that her boyfriend Kennison go and knock Burchard out. Pena testified that she saw Kennison raise a baseball bat toward the doctor and heard Turner say this while Burchard was telling Pena that they were going to end his life. Kennison beat the 71-year-old psychiatrist with blunt force trauma to the head. After the attack, Turner, Kennison, and Pena fled the Las Vegas house and returned to California. Police found evidence of blood, cleaning supplies, and a broken door inside the residence. All three suspects were eventually apprehended. John Kennison pleaded guilty to second-degree charges with a deadly weapon and conspiracy. He was sentenced in July of 2022 to 18 to 45 years in prison. Kelsey Turner entered an Alford plea to second-degree charges in November of 2022. Acknowledging prosecutors had enough evidence to prove her guilt without admitting it directly. In January of 2023, she was sentenced to 10 to 25 years. Diana Pena, who cooperated with prosecutors and provided critical testimony against the other two defendants, pleaded guilty to accessory charges in June of 2019 and was sentenced to probation not exceeding 3 years. Pena's testimony was the key that unlocked the entire case. Without her account of what happened inside that house, prosecutors would have had a body in a trunk and no witnesses. Burchard's longtime girlfriend Judy Earp described Turner as being as evil as Charles Manson. A 71-year-old psychiatrist flew to Las Vegas to visit a woman he had been supporting with hundreds of thousands of dollars of his own money. She was living with a boyfriend Burchard apparently did not know about. The doctor ended up beaten with a baseball bat, stuffed into the trunk of the woman's own Mercedes, and left in the desert near Lake Mead. What did Burchard think was happening with all that money he was sending? And did he ever suspect the woman he was funding was sharing a home with the man who would take his life? Burchard was found in the trunk of his own beneficiary's car. But the next case involves a woman who vanished from a Las Vegas street and was found 4 months later encased inside a 250-gallon concrete tomb in the desert. Esmeralda Gonzalez. On May 31, 2019, A young woman named Esmeralda Gonzalez was reported missing by her brother in Las Vegas. He had gone to check on her and found her home empty. The door was unlocked, her car was in the driveway, and her purse and wallet were still inside. She was 24 years old and had built a significant social media presence with more than 300,000 followers on Instagram. She worked in the adult entertainment industry and was described by those who knew her as someone who was living her best life. But Gonzalez also struggled with serious mental health issues, including schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. In the weeks before she vanished, her brother said she had gone off her medications, making her extremely vulnerable. Surveillance footage captured Gonzalez appearing disoriented, wandering a neighborhood dressed only in lingerie and high heels. She ended up at the home of 45-year-old Christopher Prestipino, a stagehand at the Paris Hotel on the Las Vegas Strip, who lived on essentially the same street. According to witness accounts and later statements from co-conspirator Cassandra Garrett, Prestipino gave Gonzalez methamphetamine. When she began acting erratically and threatened to call police about the substances, Prestipino restrained her by tying her to a pole in his bedroom. He then strangled her and injected her with pool cleaner. What Prestipino did next was extraordinary in its calculated effort to make Gonzalez disappear completely. Between June 8th and 10th, he rented a U-Haul truck. He was spotted at Home Depot, purchasing deck screws, lubricant, 5 60-pound bags of Quikrete concrete mix, a 50-pound bag of lime, and 8 concrete fence cap blocks. The purchases were methodical and clearly planned. He constructed a wooden frame in his garage, placed Gonzalez's body inside wrapped in a plastic tarp, and filled the entire structure with wet concrete, creating what investigators would later describe as a 250-gallon concrete tomb. He then loaded the massive structure into the U-Haul and transported it to a remote desert area near Glendale, Nevada, approximately 50 miles northeast of Las Vegas, where he left it in a wash far from any road. On October 8, 2019, more than 4 months after Gonzalez vanished, detectives following an anonymous tip located the enormous structure in the desert. It was a massive 250-gallon concrete tomb sitting in the middle of nowhere. After an arduous extraction process that required heavy equipment, investigators found a body entombed inside. Gonzalez was identified through bone DNA analysis and a Rolex watch still on her wrist that matched an appraisal document in her name. The body had a distinctive chemical smell beyond normal decomposition, consistent with the pool cleaner that had been injected into her. Prestipino had fled to Belize after disposing of the body, but made the mistake of returning. He was arrested at the Las Vegas airport on October 11, 2019, when he stepped off his flight. Prestipino reached a guilty plea agreement in March of 2023 and was sentenced to 10 to 25 years for second-degree charges, with an additional 5 to 15 years for kidnapping running concurrently. Co-conspirator Cassandra Garrett pleaded guilty to voluntary manslaughter with a deadly weapon and was sentenced in May of 2023 to 8 to 20 years. A third co-conspirator, Lisa Mort, Prestipino's girlfriend who tried to warn him detectives were investigating, pleaded guilty to accessory charges and received 2 to 5 years. The Clark County Coroner's Office ruled the official cause as undetermined despite the extensive evidence. A woman wandered a Las Vegas street in distress, vulnerable and off her medication. She ended up at the home of a stranger who gave her controlled substances, restrained her, and then spent days building a concrete tomb in his garage before driving it 50 miles into the desert. She was found 4 months later, identified by a watch on her wrist. What would have happened if her brother had found her sooner? And how many other people saw Esmeralda Gonzalez wandering that street and did nothing? Gonzalez was entombed in concrete and left in the desert. But the next case involves an attorney whose passing was initially ruled self-inflicted, until her family spent years and a fortune proving it was something far worse. Susan Winters. At 6:48 in the morning on January 3rd, 2015, a man named Gregory Brent Dennis called 911 from his Henderson, Nevada, home. He said he had found his wife Susan unresponsive in bed. She was rushed to St. Rose Sienna Hospital, but was pronounced gone shortly after arrival. An autopsy revealed she had passed from a combination of ethylene glycol, the main ingredient in antifreeze, and oxycodone. Dennis told police his wife had been mildly depressed, had a history of threats against herself, and had been drinking the night before while on her medications. He showed police an internet search related to antifreeze ingestion, claiming Susan had been looking it up herself. The Clark County Coroner's Office ruled her passing self-inflicted based largely on what Dennis told them. Susan Winters was a 48-year-old attorney and part-time judge in North Las Vegas. She came from a wealthy family that owned more than 100 restaurant franchises, including dozens of Sonic drive-ins. She was described as vibrant, accomplished, and deeply connected to her family. She lived in Henderson with Dennis, a 54-year-old psychologist, and their 2 daughters. Susan's parents, her brother Chris, and her sister-in-law Julie, never accepted the official ruling. From the moment they learned the details, they suspected Dennis. There was no note, no glass with antifreeze remnants anywhere in the bedroom, no prescription bottles or containers near the body. The family launched their own investigation, hiring retired FBI agents and private investigators and enlisting prominent criminal defense attorney Tony Scrow to build a case against Dennis. Using their substantial financial resources, the family uncovered a hidden life that Dennis had been leading behind Susan's back. He had been making frequent daily trips to the Orleans casino to meet with a man previously convicted of substance-related felonies. Just days after Susan's passing, Dennis deposited a $180,000 check from an account only Susan had access to. A check drawn the night before she passed. He contacted the insurance company 3 times in rapid succession to register her passing and ultimately collected more than $1 million in benefits. Further investigation revealed Dennis had searched online for how long antifreeze takes to end someone's life. That search was on his own devices, not Susan's. He had also delayed calling for help until Susan had stopped breathing entirely, and then signed a do not resuscitate order at the hospital, ensuring no further life-saving measures would be attempted. Armed with the family's findings, prosecutor Mark DiGiacomo agreed to reopen the case in the summer of 2016, more than 18 months after Susan's passing. Gregory Brent Dennis was arrested on February 2, 2017, more than 2 full years after Susan was found unresponsive. The coroner officially changed the manner from self-inflicted to undetermined. A grand jury indicted Dennis in October of 2017 for charges, including use of a deadly weapon. The case was delayed significantly by the pandemic, pushing the trial date back multiple times. Finally, in April of 2022, Dennis entered an Alford plea to voluntary manslaughter, acknowledging prosecutors had sufficient evidence to prove his guilt while maintaining his innocence. He was sentenced to 3 to 10 years in the Nevada Department of Corrections. A civil court also found him liable for Susan's passing in 2023 and ordered him to pay the Winters family just over $1 million in damages. Their 2 daughters reportedly supported their father throughout and maintained the belief that their mother's passing was self-inflicted. Susan Winters was an attorney who came from a family with the resources and determination to fight a ruling they knew was wrong. They hired former FBI agents. They hired private investigators. They hired one of the best lawyers in the state. And it still took 2 years just to get an arrest. If Susan's family had not had the means to fund a private investigation, her passing would still be officially classified as self-inflicted. How many others have been poisoned by the person sleeping next to them and never received the same scrutiny? Susan's family spent years and a fortune overturning a false ruling. But the next case involves a Las Vegas showgirl whose ex-boyfriend strangled her, dismembered her, and hid her remains in cement-filled tubs inside a borrowed house. Deborah Flores Narvaez. December 13th, 2010, was supposed to be the biggest night of Debbie Flores Narvaez's career. The 31-year-old dancer from Puerto Rico had earned a spot in the chorus of Fantasy, a review show at the Luxor Hotel Casino, and had been developing a special performance segment with pop singer Cisco. She had left a career in finance to chase her dream of becoming a Las Vegas showgirl. She was a former NFL cheerleader who had worked for the Washington Redskins before coming to Las Vegas in 2008. Despite lacking formal dance training, she had fought her way into one of the most competitive entertainment scenes in the world. She never made it to that debut. Flores Narvaez was last seen alive on December 12, 2010, when she went to the apartment of her ex-boyfriend, Jason Griffith, known as Blue, a 32-year-old dancer who performed in the Cirque du Soleil show Love at the Mirage. The two had a tumultuous relationship, marked by domestic incidents. Griffith had been arrested for punching and kicking her in October of 2010, a charge that was later dropped. According to roommate Louis Colombo, who later became a key prosecution witness, an argument erupted between Griffith and Flores Narvaez that night. Colombo told investigators he watched Griffith put his hands around her neck during the fight. He said he left the room and returned to find her gone. The coroner determined she passed from asphyxiation due to neck compression, meaning Griffith held her neck for an extended period. What followed was one of the most disturbing concealment efforts in Las Vegas history. Griffith and Colombo initially placed Flores Narvaez's body into a large plastic tub and filled it with fresh concrete until it weighed roughly 700 pounds. They obtained keys to a house belonging to friends who were traveling abroad, located on Bonanza Way near downtown Las Vegas. When they tried to move the massive tub into the house, it began leaking. Griffith then broke the concrete apart with a sledgehammer, used a handsaw to separate the remains, and distributed them into two smaller green plastic tubs. He covered them with fresh concrete again, secured the tubs with locking handles, and stored them inside a sealed closet in a bedroom. The windows were covered with black plastic and spray foam insulation. The break came on January 5, 2011, when a former girlfriend of Griffith named Kale Casorso told a friend that Griffith and Colombo had tried to store a plastic tub containing Debbie's body at her apartment. The friend contacted police. Officers found the dismembered remains just past midnight on January 8th, 27 days after Flores Narvaez had last been seen alive. More than 200 people attended a memorial service held at the Luxor days after the discovery. Griffith was tried in 2014 after multiple delays. The 9-day trial featured testimony from Colombo and 14 different 911 calls Griffith had made about Flores Narvaez prior to her passing, which he cited as evidence she was the aggressor. Griffith took the stand and claimed he acted in self-defense, saying he believed she was reaching for a firearm in her purse. No weapon was ever found. After approximately 14 hours of deliberation, the jury of 7 men and 5 women found him guilty of second-degree charges and sentenced him to 10 years to life. Debbie Flores Narvaez left a finance career and moved across the country to chase a dream. She was one night away from her biggest performance. She went to see an ex-boyfriend she should have never gone back to, and she never walked out of his apartment. Her remains were broken apart with a sledgehammer, separated with a handsaw, and hidden in concrete-filled tubs inside a borrowed house with blacked-out windows. The man responsible received a minimum of 10 years. 10 years for what he did to her. Was that enough? If you've made it this far and enjoy deep dives into the most shocking criminal cases, hit that subscribe button and don't forget to press the bell icon. Flores Narvaez was one night away from her breakthrough. But the next case is one of the most famous unsolved cases in music history. and it took 27 years just to make an arrest. Tupac Shakur. On the evening of September 7th, 1996, Tupac Amaru Shakur attended the Bruce Seldon vs. Mike Tyson boxing match at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas with Death Row Records CEO Marion Suge Knight. After the fight, one of Knight's associates spotted Orlando Anderson, a member of the rival Southside Compton Crips, in the MGM Grand lobby. Anderson and a group of Crips had attempted to rob Knight's associate Traven Lane at a Foot Locker store in Lakewood, California, 2 months earlier. Tupac and members of the Death Row entourage confronted and attacked Anderson in the casino lobby, an altercation captured on the hotel security cameras. Later that night, around 11:15, Knight and Tupac were driving in a black BMW near the Las Vegas Strip, heading to Knight's Club 662. A white Cadillac pulled alongside them at a red light. A gunman in the back seat opened fire, hitting Tupac 4 times, including twice in the chest. Knight was grazed by a bullet fragment. Tupac was rushed to University Medical Center, where he underwent emergency surgery. He never recovered. He passed away 6 days later on September 13th, 1996. He was 25 years old. He had been one of the most influential figures in hip-hop history, with multiple critically acclaimed albums, several film roles, and a voice that defined an entire generation of West Coast rap. For nearly 3 decades, Tupac's case remained one of the most infamous unsolved cases in American criminal history, spawning countless conspiracy theories. The primary suspect, Orlando Anderson, who was believed to have been in the back seat of the white Cadillac, was never charged. He was shot and killed in an unrelated gang incident in 1998 at 23. The driver, Terrence Brown, and another occupant, DeAndre Smith, also passed away before ever facing charges. Every person believed to have been in that Cadillac was gone before the case could be prosecuted. Then the case took its most extraordinary turn. Dwayne Davis, known as Keffy D, Anderson's uncle and a self-described Crips gang leader from Compton, began publicly speaking about his involvement. He gave interviews. He appeared in a BET documentary in 2018. And most brazenly, he published a 2019 memoir called Compton Street Legend, in which he described the circumstances of the shooting in detail. He claimed he was sitting in the front passenger's seat and that one of the men in the back seat grabbed a Glock and opened fire. He wrote about it. He talked about it on camera. He described it to anyone who would listen. For years, nothing happened. Prosecutors allege Davis orchestrated the act and provided the firearm used as retaliation for the beating of his nephew at the MGM Grand. On September 29, 2023, 27 years after the shooting, Davis was arrested and indicted by a grand jury for first-degree charges. It was the first and only arrest ever made in the case. As of March 2026, Davis remains incarcerated and awaiting trial. The case has been plagued by repeated delays, with the trial date pushed from June of 2024 to November, then March of 2025, and most recently to August of 2026 after new evidence emerged. His defense attorneys have argued the charges should be dismissed, citing the 27-year delay and claiming Davis was not even in Las Vegas that night. In a jailhouse interview with ABC News in early 2025, Davis insisted he is innocent, saying he fabricated his involvement for financial gain through documentaries and books. He now claims he was in Los Angeles that night, directly contradicting everything he had said publicly for years. A man who wrote a book about being in the car during one of the most famous shootings in music history is now saying he made the whole thing up. Meanwhile, Davis was convicted in a separate jailhouse fight case in April of 2025 and sentenced to 16 to 40 months. Judge Carly Kearney denied his motions to dismiss the charges, in January of 2025, finding no proof of any immunity agreements. 27 years, 4 people in a white Cadillac, 3 of them gone, and the 4th wrote a memoir about it. Is his book a confession or a fabrication? The trial may finally answer that. Tupac's case took 27 years to produce an arrest, but the next case took 30 years, and the answer came from a DNA sample matched to a man who had already passed away. Melanie White. On August 27, 1994, 2 men hiking along Lake Mead Boulevard near the entrance to the Lake Mead National Recreation Area discovered a woman's body at the bottom of a desert wash, roughly 10 miles east of Las Vegas. The Clark County Coroner's Office identified her the following day as Melanie White, a 27-year-old mother of a baby boy who had recently moved to Las Vegas from Phoenix with her boyfriend. Her passing was ruled a homicide. Evidence indicated she had been strangled with a ligature, struck, and dragged from a vehicle into the wash. She had gone missing the night of August 26th. Several of her friends had seen her that evening in an area of Las Vegas near where her eventual attacker lived. Melanie was described by her brothers, Walter and Jason White, as someone with a super kind heart, a lover of fashion, and someone who was on an inspired search for a new career. She had been going through a transitional period at the time, splitting her time between Phoenix and Las Vegas. Her family said she had been struggling, but she was trying to build something new in a new city. Her son was just a baby when she was taken from him. Despite following up on numerous leads, Las Vegas homicide detectives were unable to identify a suspect, and the case went cold. In 2010, cold case detectives reviewed the evidence and submitted additional items from the crime scene for DNA testing. A male DNA profile was developed and entered into CODIS, the national database. No match was found. The profile sat in the system for over a decade, waiting. Then in 2021, cold case detectives partnered with the Vegas Justice League, a Las Vegas nonprofit founded by entrepreneur Justin Wu that funds forensic genetic genealogy testing for unsolved cases. The organization was founded on a simple premise. Families who have waited decades for answers should not have to wait for government budgets to catch up with the science. Wu's nonprofit has privately funded the testing of dozens of cold cases in partnership with LVMPD. They sent the unknown suspect profile from Melanie's case to Othram Inc., a pioneering forensic sequencing laboratory in Texas. Using advanced genome sequencing and genealogical research, Othram scientists developed a full DNA profile and traced it to distant relatives through public records and family trees. Through comparison testing of potential relatives, investigators positively identified the suspect as Arthur Joseph Lavery, born September 7, 1955, who had grown up in the Las Vegas area and was 38 at the time of White's passing. The grim irony of the identification was that Lavery could never face justice. He had passed away on February 20th, 2021, from heart disease and complications related to COVID-19. He was gone before his name ever surfaced in the investigation. Police said they had been unable to find him sooner, partly because he had very little criminal history, with only a prior battery charge on his record. He had lived a relatively unremarkable life in the Las Vegas area for decades, while the case of the woman he left in a desert wash remained unsolved. At a press event on October 22, 2024, the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department publicly identified Lavery as Melanie White's attacker, bringing closure to the family nearly 30 years after her passing. Melanie's brothers spoke emotionally at the conference. Jason said the call from police that identified the suspect closed the book on 30 years of not knowing. Walter added that the loss had shattered their mother and that it was comforting to finally have an answer. Melanie's son was 33 years old at the time of the announcement. He had lived his entire life without his mother and without knowing who was responsible. The case was the 9th cold case solved through the partnership between LVMPD and the Vegas Justice League, a nonprofit that has now helped solve over 100 cold cases. A mother of a baby boy was left in a desert wash in 1994. It took 30 years, a pandemic, a nonprofit, and a lab in Texas to finally put a name to the man who put her there. What would have happened if COVID had not taken Lavery first? Melanie's case was solved by DNA 30 years later. But the next case was solved the same way, and the man identified turned out to be connected to not just one case, but potentially many more. Diana Hansen. On December 30th, 1983, the day before New Year's Eve, a 22-year-old college student named Diana Hansen left her parents' home in Las Vegas around 4:30 in the afternoon for her daily jog. She was the daughter of a pilot stationed at Nellis Air Force Base. She had recently come home for the Christmas holidays and was a graduate of Clark High School. Her brother Kevin had given her a Walkman with headphones so she could listen to music while running. When she was home in Las Vegas, she would always go jogging with a friend for safety. On this particular day, she went alone. She never returned. Her family reported her missing that evening when she failed to come home. The following day, December 31st, a construction worker picking up a firewood discovered Hansen's body in a desert area on West Spring Mountain Road, about 1.5 miles west of South Buffalo Drive. Police determined she had been taken somewhere along her jogging route and driven to the remote location. An autopsy revealed she had been assaulted and stabbed more than a dozen times. DNA was recovered from her body, but the technology of 1983 could not identify her attacker. The case went cold. For 38 years, Hansen's family lived without answers. Her mother was deeply devastated by the loss, struggling for years to make sense of what had happened to her daughter on a routine afternoon jog. The family never stopped hoping that someday the case would be reopened. The breakthrough finally came in late 2021, when LVMPD detectives used advanced DNA technology from Texas-based Othram Inc. to solve the 1979 case of Kim Bryant, a Western high school student who had been kidnapped, assaulted, and taken in Las Vegas 4 years before Hansen. The DNA from Bryant's case identified her attacker as Johnny Blake Peterson, a Las Vegas native born September 12, 1960, who worked as a freelance plasterer and had no significant criminal record that would have drawn investigators' attention. Almost immediately after Peterson was publicly identified in the Bryant case, an anonymous acquaintance contacted investigators with information suggesting Peterson may have also been responsible for what happened to Diana Hansen. The tip was specific enough that detectives moved quickly. They compared the DNA preserved from Hansen's body to Peterson's profile, and within 2 weeks, it came back as a positive match. The same man had targeted both women using an identical pattern, taking young women from public areas in broad daylight, driving them to remote desert locations outside the city, assaulting them and ending their lives. 2 cases, 4 years apart, same method, same man. Peterson had passed away from an overdose in a hospital on January 20th, 1993, at the age of 32. He was never once considered a suspect in either case during his lifetime. Both the Hansen and Bryant cases were officially closed in December of 2021 after the DNA matches confirmed Peterson as the person responsible. Since Peterson passed away in 1993, no arrests were possible. Kevin Hansen, Diana's brother, expressed relief mixed with lingering pain, saying that time does not heal the loss of a sibling, but acknowledged the importance of finally knowing who was responsible. As of late 2021, LVMPD announced they were investigating Peterson in connection with at least 5 additional unsolved cases from the late 1970s and early 1980s. a freelance plasterer from Las Vegas who passed away from an overdose in 1993 at 32 years old. Nobody suspected him of anything during his lifetime, and now investigators believe he may have been responsible for at least 7 cases across 4 years. Diana Hansen went for a jog on the day before New Year's Eve and never came home. It took 38 years and a DNA lab in Texas to find out why. How many others did Johnny Blake Peterson target before his own life ended? Peterson may have been responsible for 7 cases across 4 years. But the next case involves a real estate millionaire whose remains were found near Lake Mead, and the woman convicted of his case spent 20 years in prison before her conviction was thrown out. Ron Rudin. Ronald Rudin was a 64-year-old multi-millionaire real estate developer who had made his fortune in the booming Las Vegas property market of the 1980s and 90s. He was a powerful figure in the community, known for his charm, his signature slick black cowboy boots, and his enormous collection of firearms. He was also extremely paranoid. He had security glass installed at his home and office, wore a bulletproof vest, carried a firearm at nearly all times, including to church, and had cameras at his residence. He had been married 5 times. His 3rd wife passed away in the mid-1970s in circumstances officially ruled self-inflicted. Though questions lingered, including that her note appeared to be written in 2 different handwritings, Ron married his 5th wife, Margaret, in 1987. Ron vanished from the couple's Las Vegas home in December of 1994, just days before Christmas. Margaret said she last saw him, alive, on December 18th, the night of the grand opening of her new antique store. When his co-workers could not reach him, and he failed to show up for work, they urged her to file a report. On the night of January 21st, 1995, fishermen near Nelson's Landing, roughly 60 miles outside Las Vegas, discovered Ron Rudin's skull with 4 bullet holes. His namesake diamond bracelet was found nearby. His burned and partially separated remains were found in the remnants of a burned-out antique trunk at the site. A .22 caliber Ruger handgun with a silencer, registered to Ron Rudin, was later found by scuba divers at Lake Mead in July of 1996 and was confirmed as the weapon used. Ron had reported that particular firearm missing in 1988, shortly after he married Margaret. Suspicion focused on her immediately. Police alleged she shot her husband while he slept, had helped disposing the remains near Lake Mojave, and was motivated by money to prevent Ron from divorcing her and cutting her out of his estate. The case received massive national media attention. America's Most Wanted featured it repeatedly, dubbing Margaret the Black Widow of Las Vegas. A grand jury indicted her in April of 1997. But by then, she had fled the state. She spent 31 months on the run, changing identities multiple times, before she was finally arrested in Revere, Massachusetts, in November of 1999. Her 2001 trial on Court TV became one of Las Vegas's most notorious. Despite the lack of any DNA evidence, fingerprints, or witnesses tying Margaret to the scene or weapon, a jury convicted her based largely on circumstantial evidence and the testimony of a handyman who claimed she hired him to clean blood from the couple's home. She was sentenced to life with the possibility of parole after 20 years. Margaret Rudin maintained her innocence for 20 years in prison, turning down 5 plea deals. She was paroled on January 10, 2020, at the age of 76. In 2022, a federal judge vacated her conviction, finding she had received ineffective counsel from her late defense attorney, who the judge said was more interested in celebrity than defending his client. The judge noted there was no evidence linking Rudin to the weapon, the abandoned car, or the suspected crime scene. The Clark County DA declined to retry her, and in December of 2024, a Las Vegas judge formally dismissed the charges. Margaret Rudin, now 81, filed a wrongful conviction lawsuit against the state in May of 2024, citing her 8,187 days spent in prison. Her attorneys have pointed to alternative suspects, including Ron's organized crime connections, women he was having affairs with, and disgruntled employees. An unidentified fingerprint found at the scene has never been matched. However, the wrongful conviction lawsuit was dismissed in January of 2026. Margaret says she is writing a book. Ron Rudin was shot 4 times in the head, burned in a trunk, and left near Lake Mead. His wife spent 20 years in prison for it. A federal judge said the conviction was flawed. The charges have been dismissed. If Margaret did not do it, then who shot Ron Rudin in his sleep and drove his remains 60 miles into the desert? Margaret Rudin spent 20 years behind bars before her conviction was overturned. But the final case on this list may be the most Las Vegas story of all. A casino heir, a former dancer, a secret lover, buried silver, and 2 trials that reached opposite verdicts. Ted Binion. Lonnie Theodore Binion, known as Ted, was born November 28, 1943, in Dallas, Texas. He was the son of legendary Las Vegas gambling pioneer Benny Binion, who built the famed Horseshoe Club in the 1950s. Ted grew up in the casino world and became a prominent gambling executive in his own right. But he also lived a life tangled in organized crime connections, heavy substance use, and paranoia. His gaming license was revoked in March of 1998 due to his associations and addiction, barring him from entering the family casino. He possessed a multi-million-dollar collection of silver bars and coins known as the Binion Hoard, worth approximately $6 to $8 million. By 1998, the 55-year-old's life was spiraling, consumed by substances, paranoia, and a volatile relationship with his much younger live-in girlfriend, Sandy Murphy, a former dancer he had met at a club called Cheetahs. On September 17, 1998, at 3:55 in the afternoon, a hysterical Sandy Murphy called 911, saying her boyfriend had stopped breathing. Paramedics found Binion on the floor of his den, lying on a yoga mat with an empty bottle of Xanax nearby. The Clark County Chief Medical Examiner initially ruled that Binion had passed from an accidental combination of heroin and Xanax, with self-inflicted harm as a possibility. But Ted's sister, Becky Bainan, who ran the Horseshoe Club, refused to accept that ruling. Becky hired a private investigator named Tom Dillard, who uncovered evidence that Murphy and Rick Tabish, a financially troubled Montana contractor with a criminal record, had been carrying on a secret affair throughout the summer of 1998. Crucially, Dillard discovered that the day before his passing, Binion had instructed a lawyer to remove Murphy from his will. On the day itself, Murphy called the housekeeper and told her to stay home. She was later seen on video taking a wine glass from the kitchen and putting it into her purse. Prosecutors theorized the glass was used to administer a fatal cocktail of heroin and Xanax. Then came the detail that made this case unlike anything Las Vegas had ever seen. Just 34 hours after Binion was found, police caught Tabish and 2 accomplices in the Nevada desert town of Pahrump, where Binion had buried his massive silver collection in an underground vault. Officers found a truck loaded with silver and Tabish digging up the vault in the middle of the night. Only 2 people had known the combination, Binion and Tabish. When Murphy bailed Tabish out of jail, the story exploded. The coroner reclassified Binion's passing as a homicide. The first trial in 2000 became known as Las Vegas's trial of the century. The prosecution hired famed forensic pathologist Dr. Michael Baden, who testified that 2 small red marks on Binion's chest indicated a rare form of suffocation where one person blocks the airways while another sits on the chest. After 8 days of deliberation, the jury convicted both Murphy and Tabish on all counts. Tabish received 25 years to life. Murphy received 22 years to life. But the story did not end there. In July of 2003, the Nevada Supreme Court overturned the convictions, finding errors in jury instructions and that testimony about an unrelated charge against Tabish had prejudiced the jury. A second trial took place in October of 2004. This time, the jury was not convinced. Murphy and Tabish were acquitted of the primary charges, but convicted of conspiring to commit burglary and grand larceny for stealing the silver. Murphy was released with time served and moved to Southern California, where she married, had 2 children, and now runs an art gallery with her husband. Tabish spent roughly 10 years in Nevada prisons, was paroled in 2010, and returned to Montana to work in his family's petroleum business. He later became president of a cryptocurrency company. Today he describes himself as someone who hangs around quality people, with no substances and no idiots. The mystery of whether Ted Binion was actually targeted or passed from an accidental overdose related to his severe addiction remains officially unresolved. A casino heir, a buried silver hoard, a former dancer, a secret lover caught digging up treasure in the desert at midnight. 2 trials, 2 opposite verdicts, and a question that Las Vegas has been arguing about for nearly 3 decades. Was Ted Binion's passing staged, or did he do it to himself? This was all from our side today. Thanks for watching. Click here to check out another video.